And then just to maybe make the background also more interesting, I'm just going to have another shape edit maybe down here with this detail, or maybe even this other one, and just set it to white like that. And we can make this thicker, and not that thick, maybe 5 points. Might be still a little bit too much, 3. Yeah, that looks better. And we just want this to be going all the way in the back. So we can just align it here, make it seem like that circle that is created on the top is continuing further down and creating this shape where it's a bit more textured. Okay, something like that. And now I just noticed that this little detail here feels like almost a continuation of that line in the background, and I don't want this to be confused with the head, so I'm going to just drag this one down and separate it. So that would have been a tangent that I created there, which I wanted to fix. And then finally, another thing that you can do to make things more interesting is to introduce brushes on the edges of objects. For instance, here in the background we have this big yellow square, and this is the brush which I set up as a pattern brush that we can use for this purpose. So if I click on this, it's going to be assigned to the edge of the shape, but I'm going to use the same color as the fill color, so it's yellow on yellow, and I can just show you from the appearance panel. There's the pattern brush applied. I can turn it off, turn it back on. And the way it's set up is that depending on the weight that you use on the stroke, it's going to extend further outside of the original shape, or if you reduce the weight, it's going to stay closer, of course. Now, whenever you use pattern brushes on strokes, one thing that you can't do is to change the alignment, so it will always be set to center. That's just a limitation you have to keep in mind. I actually prefer the texture quality of this when it's set to 1 point. I think that's when it looks best. So even from a distance, we can see it. But sometimes if you draw a shape that you want it in a specific place, like if we look at our sketch, we wanted that shape to be a little bit smaller. In these cases, what you can do is to just go to the object menu and choose path, offset path, and then you can say maybe -10 or -5, and that way you can make the shape smaller. But whenever you use offset path, you have to remember that there is always a duplicate created when you use this feature, so you have to delete the larger shape to be able to actually see what you've done with that effect. So there's our new shape, which is smaller in size, but together with the stroke and the pattern brush on it, it's actually filling up the shape that we wanted originally. I can turn off the sketch now, just so it doesn't get in the way. And I will apply the same technique on a few other shapes. Like this outline, I definitely think would benefit from this effect. I just quickly select the same stroke color, and then from the drop down here, we can just apply the brush. And that is looking good. However, there's a little bit of break here. Just see all around, the other details are looking fine. Here, I'm not 100% sure why this is happening. Maybe if we add a little bit of roundness, that's going to fix it. Yeah, just using the corner widget. Sometimes if you have strange outlines, it might not work as well. And we can actually introduce this on these floral details as well. Since they are the same color, we could even group these together, and even that shape there, even using compound path, so Command or Control 8, so that becomes a single shape. The only thing you have to pay attention to is if the objects are overlapping, there will be an issue there. So maybe instead of compound path, I'm just going to group these together. That's Command or Control G. And then while the group is selected, I'm going to assign the same color on the stroke as what we have here already. And if you see these strange shapes appearing around the corners, that is because you most likely need to simplify the paths, or maybe just use the corner widgets on them and just round them down a bit. So this can happen when there's very sharp details created. Most of them disappeared, but there's still some issues. So I'm just going to use the simplify option from the path menu, or maybe smooth. Let's try smoothing them down. Going to increase this value, and there you go, it's fixed it already. So we can just click away and it's done. Now let's just add the same effect maybe on the beard and the hair. Those are two larger details as well. So I'm just going to select the outline of the hair and the beard, maybe also the mustache, and then we can add the same stroke color as the fill color and then apply the brush on them and just reduce the size to 0.5 or maybe even to 0.25 so it stays closer. And we can see that it's been applied well on the mustache and the beard. Maybe there is a little artifact going on here. Just going to smooth out this shape a bit. Maybe it's the other one. Yeah, that's better. I want to have a bit of separation between the two, so I just move them apart like this. And then for the hair, it seemed like it didn't apply it. So let me try this again. And I can see why it is not showing up, because it is actually a clipping path. So if you want to use this effect on a clipping path, what you actually need to do is to duplicate the path itself. So in this case, I'm going to use the clipping path, Alt or Option click and drag it out. And then immediately it's starting to show up. It's best to put it underneath the other object. And then we can decide on the thickness of the effect. But this time I actually like the way it looks, and it even creates a little bit of gap there. Now, once again, if this is something that you want to avoid, you can of course use offset path. So we can go into path, offset path, and we can decide how far we want to go in. Maybe -4 will be enough this time. Let's click OK. And then we just delete the duplicate. And this is actually turned out to be too small. So we can increase the thickness of the stroke. And now we have that nice effect around the edges. So that is looking quite nice. I like the way it turned out. And it's completely up to you whether you want to apply this to all of the shapes or just keep some shapes the way they are, having more of the crisp, clean edge. And then there is a good contrast between the clean shapes and the more organic shapes. What I'm going to do maybe as a final step is to just draw a few more shapes inside the lips. So I'm going to set a draw inside on that. And using the brush tool, I will maybe use this shape or this brush here and maybe use yellow on it like that. Or maybe we can use pink as well. Let's just draw over it again and almost like building up a little bit of effect here. I'm going to use maybe the teal as well. That's also quite a cool little technique. You can combine multiple colors with the same brush or even different brushes if you want to, and that way you can build up a bit more detail and effect on a certain area. Okay, so I hope you like this technique. If you want to see another composition created in this style, I have another portrait which you can follow along. And in that one, since I already showed you the whole process here, I'm working a little bit faster but using the same techniques.